I used to think the hardest part of pregnancy would be swollen ankles, or the constant back pain, or the never-ending hunt for a sleeping position that didn't make me feel like a whale stuck on dry land. But none of it, prepared me for what really shattered me. My name is Haley Monroe, and I'm 31 years old. I teach art at Boulder Ridge High School, tucked in the heart of Boulder, Colorado, where people still leave handwritten notes on bulletin boards and neighbors bring you soup when you're sick. I loved my life. It was simple. It was mine. I poured my energy into my students, taught them how to tell their stories with color, texture, and risk. My job made me feel like I mattered, and I thought I had found that same feeling in Ethan Monroe. He was everything I never expected: clean-cut, put together, magnetic. We met at a fundraiser for local arts programs. He worked at Cascade Horizon Insurance, some polished executive type, there on behalf of corporate sponsorship. I showed up straight from the classroom, still in a paint-streaked chambray shirt and a clay-smudged skirt. I felt invisible in that crowd. He made me feel seen. He smiled like I mattered. And that's dangerous magic when you've spent most of your life blending into the background. Ethan came from money. His family was Boulder royalty. His mother, Vivian Monroe, ran the Monroe Foundation, a charity that dripped with prestige, black tie galas, and family-first slogans etched in gold. His sister, Brielle, was a yoga-chic lifestyle influencer whose content revolved around green juice, curated lighting, and perfect family holiday aesthetics. Their lives were glossy, untouchable. And for a while, Ethan made me believe that love could soften all the sharp edges of their world. We dated 10 months before he proposed. The ring sparkled like a confession. I didn't care about its price. I cared that he got down on one knee and whispered, "You're not just different, Haley. You're real, and I need real." It felt like a movie. It wasn't. Our wedding was modest. A vineyard outside Lyon. I wore my mom's vintage veil. He wore cufflinks engraved with his family crest. I thought it was a union. In reality, it was the first stitch in a web. Vivian made a toast that night. It began with, "We welcome Haley into the Monroe legacy," and ended with, "She'll learn how to carry herself in time." People laughed. I did too. But something cold settled inside me that night. Something I brushed off in favor of, "Maybe I'm overthinking it." We moved into a modern townhouse on the east side of town. I hung art in the hallway. He bought minimalist furniture. We laughed, we fought, we made up. Life went on. 3 years later, I was 8 months pregnant. We were expecting a girl. It was Ethan's idea to take a baby moon. He pitched it like a love letter, a final getaway before diapers and night feeds and sleep deprivation. "Just the two of us," he said. "Sunshine, room service, maternity swimsuits, and zero expectations." I smiled. He booked a luxury spa in Santa Fe. I packed a hospital bag, just in case, because I'm a planner, and bought a new straw hat for the trip. It was the first thing I'd bought for myself in months. The night before we left, he dropped it casually over dinner. "Oh, by the way, Mom and Brielle are joining us for a few days." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "They've been stressed. It's just a few days. We'll still get plenty of alone time." I should have said no. I should have fought harder. But I was exhausted, swollen, hormonal, desperate to believe this trip could be some kind of reset. So I nodded. "Sure, of course." And just like that, I compromised again. We left early the next morning. The first warning sign came before we even hit the highway. Ethan opened the SUV door and gestured toward the back. "You don't mind sitting back here, do you?" he asked. "Mom gets carsick." I hesitated, one hand on my belly. The seats were low. I wasn't sure I'd even fit, but I nodded. Vivian was already seated in the front, sipping matcha from a crystal tumbler. She didn't even look at me. Brielle slid into the back beside me, spritzing her face with rose water and scrolling her phone like she was live streaming the apocalypse. The car smelled like designer perfume and detachment. 2 hours into the drive, I asked if we could stop. My back ached. My bladder felt like it was staging a rebellion. Ethan sighed. "There's a station coming up. Be quick." We pulled into a remote gas stop just north of Taos. It looked like a postcard from the 1960s. Cracked pavement, rusted signage, a single pump swaying in the heat. I shuffled out, holding my belly, and headed toward the restroom. As I walked away, I heard Brielle snicker, "This is going to be fun." I didn't look back. Inside the restroom, I splashed water on my face. I told myself everything would be fine, that I was imagining the tension, that this trip could still be salvaged. I adjusted my sundress, smoothed my hair, took 3 slow breaths, and when I stepped outside, they were gone. At first, I panicked quietly. Maybe they moved to another part of the lot? I walked the perimeter. No car, no engine hum, no laughter, just dust, heat, and the sound of wind. Then I saw it. Taillights, barely visible, vanishing onto the highway. My husband's SUV, my phone, my purse, my hospital bag, all still inside. They had left me. They had left me. One hand on my belly, the other shading my eyes. I stood frozen in the sun, too stunned to scream. A voice broke through the silence. "You all right, ma'am?" I turned. A man in oil-stained jeans and a sun-bleached hat stood near the station door. His name tag said, Frank. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Frank gently took my arm. "Let's get you inside." The coolness of the air-conditioned office hit me like a wave. I sank into a plastic chair, tears blurring the edges of everything. "They left me," I finally whispered. Frank nodded grimly. "I saw." He handed me a bottle of water and picked up the landline. "Rosalia," he said into the receiver, "we've got a situation." I woke up the next morning in a hospital bed. The first thing I heard was the beeping of a fetal monitor. The second was the soft murmur of my best friend Nicole arguing with someone in the hallway. The contractions had stopped during the night. False labor, the doctor had said. A stress response. I didn't need a medical degree to know that. Nicole swept into the room like a thunderstorm in a business suit. Her hair was a mess. She had dark circles under her eyes and a tote bag the size of a carry-on slung over her shoulder. "You're awake," she said, relief softening her voice. She walked over and immediately took my hand like it was a lifeline. "I thought I was dreaming," I said hoarsely. "You weren't," she replied. "They left you, and the whole country knows." She handed me a tablet. It was already unlocked, queued up to a news site. The headline read, "Pregnant woman abandoned at remote gas station, caught on camera." There in grainy security footage was me, 8 months pregnant, walking out of a bathroom, eyes scanning the lot. And in the background, Ethan's SUV pulling away. The audio was clear. "Better take a walk, sweetheart." Laughter followed. I pressed the tablet to my chest and closed my eyes. This was no longer private. It was public. It was viral. The footage had spread overnight like wildfire. The video was everywhere. News channels, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Influencers and celebrities were weighing in, expressing outrage. Hashtags were trending. Justice for Haley, #Monroe abandonment, #protect mothers. Then came Vivian. She posted a video from a luxury cabana, glass of champagne in hand, perfect makeup, pearl earrings. The caption read, "Setting the record straight." In the clip, she smiled sweetly at the camera. "This situation has been grossly misrepresented. Haley has always been emotionally fragile. She requested space. We respected that." Nicole slammed her palm against the side table. "Fragile? She's gaslighting the entire country." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was still too stunned by the footage, by the comments, by the sudden shift from invisibility to spectacle. Then my phone, retrieved from the resort and brought by a staff member, lit up with a text from Tori Blake, the Channel 12 reporter from the gas station. "We just received an anonymous voicemail leak. It's about the night before. You okay for a call?" Nicole raised an eyebrow. "Put her on speaker." Tori's voice crackled through the phone. "Haley, this is going to be difficult to hear." She pressed play. It was Brielle's voice, giddy, high-pitched. "So tomorrow's the big moment? God, I wish I could see her face." Ethan, "She'll probably think it's a joke. Wait till it hits her, we're not coming back." Brielle, "Just make sure she doesn't have her phone. You know how she starts crying, making drama." Ethan, "Don't worry, I've got it. Hospital bag too. Let her sweat." There was laughter, then silence. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. "They planned it," I whispered. Tori's voice returned, low and measured. "We've confirmed it. The metadata checks out. The voicemail is real." Nicole sat down hard. "They didn't just abandon you, Haley. They orchestrated it, documented it, enjoyed it." I nodded slowly. "They tried to humiliate me while I was carrying their grandchild." No one said a word for several minutes. And then I whispered, "I want to destroy them, but not for me, for her." That afternoon, Frank and Rosalia showed up at the hospital. Frank wore a too-small suit and carried a folder. Rosalia brought tamales wrapped in foil, a stuffed lamb, and a hug that nearly broke me. "You're a firestorm out there," Frank said proudly. "Your story's everywhere." "They're calling you the mother of the movement," Rosalia added. "Women are speaking up, finally." "I didn't want this," I said. "I just wanted them to see me." Rosalia cupped my cheek. "They do now." Later that evening, a new visitor arrived. He was tall, sharply dressed, and carried an air of nervous professionalism. The name tag on his blazer read, "Michael Brennan, Chief Ethics Officer, Cascade Horizon Insurance." Nicole stepped forward like a shield. "I'm not here to defend Ethan," he said quickly. "I'm here to tell you what we've uncovered." He sat and opened a thin leather folder. Inside were documents, emails, memos, calendar invites. "Ethan used company time and resources to contact family lawyers," Michael said. "Specifically, attorneys who specialize in maternal instability claims." He turned a page. "There's a document here outlining a plan to establish a case for full custody. It includes notes on isolating you, undermining your credibility, and using your pregnancy as leverage." I felt like I was going to throw up. Nicole was already snapping photos of everything. "There's more," Michael said. "Vivian has been reaching out to former interns and business partners, asking for character statements. She's trying to frame you as emotionally erratic, unfit." "What happens now?" I asked. He closed the folder gently. "We're suspending Ethan, opening a full investigation, and if you decide to take legal action, the company will cooperate fully." Nicole stepped in. "She will." That night, I watched Channel 7 News from my hospital bed. They had more leaks, voicemails, emails, a dashcam recording from Ethan's company car. Vivian's voice was clear. "She thinks just because she's carrying a Monroe baby, she gets to have a say? This'll teach her." Ethan replied, "One public panic attack, and it's game over. The judge won't even blink." And the anchor's voice was tight with fury. "Experts are calling this one of the most egregious examples of emotional manipulation and reputational coercion in recent history." By morning, over a dozen former Monroe Foundation employees had come forward, accusing Vivian of emotional abuse, fraud, NDAs used as threats. It wasn't just me anymore. The truth had momentum, and I was done whispering. Done. I posted my first public statement on Instagram. "They tried to break me. They left me in the desert like a piece of discarded furniture. But I'm still here. And I'm not just standing. I'm rising. Not for revenge, for justice. For every woman who's been told she was too much, too fragile, too emotional. We're done being quiet." The post had 2.1 million likes in 48 hours. But more importantly, I got a message from someone I never expected. "My name is Amanda Chambers. I was Ethan's executive assistant for 3 years. I have information you need, and I can't stay silent anymore." The knock on my hospital room door the next morning was soft but insistent. Nicole was spoon-feeding me oatmeal, her version of post-trauma TLC, and muttering about how food was fuel for fury when the door creaked open. A woman stepped in, clutching a leather folder so tightly her knuckles were white. "My name is Amanda Chambers," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I was Ethan's executive assistant for 3 years." Nicole stood up immediately, eyes sharp. "You're the one who messaged Haley?" Amanda nodded. "Yes, and I brought everything." She took a deep breath and stepped forward, setting the folder on the tray table beside my untouched oatmeal. I watched her with caution. She looked haunted, sleepless, like someone who had been holding a secret for too long and had finally cracked under the weight of it. "I didn't know everything," she said, "but I knew enough. And after I saw what they did to you, what they planned, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." She opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, voice transcripts, financial statements, and meeting notes. Everything was color-coded and annotated. Amanda had done her homework. "This," she said, tapping the first page, "is a timeline of their plan." At the top of the document was a date, 5 months ago. That's when Vivian first mentioned taking legal action. She didn't trust you, said you were too emotional to raise a Monroe baby alone. She started pushing Ethan to consult with specific attorneys, ones with connections to family court judges in Denver. Amanda flipped the page. These are Ethan's internal memos. He used Cascade's resources, company devices, scheduling software, even travel expenses, to build a custody strategy. I leaned in. On the next page were bullet points under the title, Custody Strategy, Phase 1, Undermine. Gather documentation of emotional outbursts. Encourage public reaction under stress. Control access to financial accounts. Remove phone access before incident. Hospital bag confiscation. Retain PR advisor for optics post-event. Nicole gasped. This wasn't emotional neglect. This was weaponized. Amanda's eyes brimmed with tears. They were waiting for you to break. They built a paper trail. Vivian even set up pre-written statements for the press, portraying Ethan as the stable, heartbroken father trying to protect the child. But that wasn't the worst of it. Amanda hesitated before sliding over the next set of documents. This is where it crosses into something else. It was an insurance policy, taken out 3 months ago, in Ethan's name, on me. A maternal life insurance policy specifically structured for third trimester complications, activated only in non-hospital environments. Nicole's hand flew to her mouth. They were counting on something going wrong, Amanda said. At the gas station, in the heat, with your phone gone and no help around. If you went into labor, if something happened to you, Ethan would have collected a massive payout. My entire body went cold. They didn't just abandon you, Amanda whispered. They gambled on you not surviving it. I wanted to scream, cry, vomit, but I didn't do any of that. Instead, I reached for my phone and opened my contacts. FBI tip line. Nicole nodded without even asking. You're sure? Amanda asked. I'm done surviving their schemes, I said. Now I'm burning the whole damn blueprint. That night, Tori Blake met us in the hospital's family conference room. Amanda sat beside me, hands trembling, as we handed over everything. Every memo, every audio file, every signed document. Tori's face was pale. Haley, this isn't just abuse. This is attempted fraud, possibly premeditated endangerment, maybe even criminal conspiracy. I know, I said. She looked over the insurance paperwork again. This needs to go national, prime time, tonight. Nicole handed her a USB. It already is. By morning, the country knew. Hat Monroe conspiracy trended above celebrity gossip and election headlines. Survivors of abuse, financial manipulation, and family coercion flooded social media with their stories. But the public wasn't the only one watching. The FBI released a statement. We are formally investigating allegations involving the Monroe Foundation and Cascade Horizon Insurance related to fraudulent insurance policies, custody tampering, and premeditated endangerment of a pregnant woman. Vivian's PR team tried to respond with a statement calling the situation deeply personal and being handled privately. The internet laughed, then dissected every lie. Nicole and I sat in silence, watching the news. I can't believe it, I whispered. They built an entire plan. They wrote it down like it was a marketing campaign. That's because that's what it was, she said. Vivian doesn't love people. She manages them. I stared at the ultrasound photo taped to the hospital wall. My daughter's going to grow up in a world where no one can silence her mother, ever again. Then, something unexpected happened. Cascade Horizon Insurance released an emergency press statement. Their CEO, flanked by board members and legal advisors, stood behind a podium. Effective immediately, he said, Ethan Monroe has been terminated. We denounce his actions in the strongest possible terms. Furthermore, Cascade is launching an internal audit to identify any complicity within our ranks. We will cooperate fully with all federal investigations." He paused. "To Haley Monroe, we failed you, and we will do everything in our power to make it right." That afternoon, the hospital room phone rang. "Ms. Monroe," the nurse said, "you have another visitor. Says it's urgent." A man in his early 50s walked in, neatly dressed, holding a plain white envelope. "My name is Robert Quinlan," he said. "I'm a former board member of the Monroe Foundation." Nicole's jaw tensed. "And why are you here?" He opened the envelope and laid out 4 photographs: Vivian, Ethan, a third man I didn't recognize, and a document labeled Judicial Strategy, Custody Intervention, Pre-Screened Contacts. "There's more to this," Robert said, "and I'm ready to testify." I looked at him. "Why now?" He sighed. "Because if my daughter were in your shoes, I'd want someone to speak up." That night, as I lay in the hospital bed, unable to sleep, I posted again. "They built a plan to break me, but they underestimated something bigger than legacy, wealth, or control. They underestimated truth, and women who are done being quiet." I included a photo of my baby's ultrasound. Caption, "She kicks every time I speak up, so I'm not stopping now." They thought I would fade. They thought I'd disappear into shame, retreat into silence, or collapse beneath the weight of their wealth and influence. What they didn't expect was that I'd take the spotlight and turn it on them. 3 days after Amanda handed over the damning documents and the FBI announced the official launch of their investigation, I received a phone call that would change the course of the story again. "Haley?" It was Tori Blake's voice, urgent but excited. "Vivian Monroe was just arrested." I sat up in bed so fast that I nearly pulled my IV loose. "She was attempting to board a private flight out of New Mexico," Tori continued. "Destination, Sedona. Claiming she needed spiritual realignment. The agents caught her in a silk robe and pearls. She actually shouted, 'Do you know who I am?'" Nicole laughed from the other side of the room. "Of course she did." But Tori wasn't done. "They're charging her with insurance fraud, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit custodial interference, and that's just the beginning. There's a sealed indictment coming." The arrest made national headlines within the hour. The footage of Vivian being escorted in cuffs, looking bewildered and furious in a designer robe and Louis Vuitton slides, looped on every major news channel. It was poetic. Her carefully curated empire, her legacy, falling apart under the blinding light of her own arrogance. I watched the clips from my hospital bed, stunned. Then Rosalia arrived with hot soup and the morning paper. Her husband Frank had circled the front page headline in thick red marker. "Legacy of Lies, Monroe Matriarch, Arrested in Viral Custody Fraud Scandal." "She's done," Rosalia said, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. "Now it's his turn." But Ethan didn't go quietly. He'd deactivated all his social media accounts and checked into a remote mountain lodge in Telluride, hoping the storm would pass him by. It didn't. His former assistant, Jacob Rowe, reached out to Nicole via email with the subject line, "I can't stay silent anymore." He turned over even more damning evidence: dashcam footage, encrypted emails, Slack messages. Ethan had openly discussed his plan to minimize Haley's credibility and position himself as the emotionally stable parent if things got messy. In one recording, his voice was cold and calculating. "She's hormonal, unstable. Once she cracks in public, I'll be the safe parent. Courts eat that up." Brielle chimed in on another clip. "Just make sure she doesn't have a therapist backing her. That'll screw up the fragile angle." When I heard that, something inside me snapped. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to erase me, to redefine me, to strip away my strength and replace it with fragility. I wouldn't let them. The next day, the FBI and Colorado State Attorney's Office held a joint press conference. I watched from my hospital room, surrounded by nurses, volunteers, and Nicole, who brought popcorn like we were at a movie premiere. A stern-faced federal prosecutor stepped up to the podium. "Today, we are announcing formal charges against Vivian Monroe, Ethan Monroe, and Brielle Monroe." These charges include, but are not limited to, insurance fraud, endangerment of a pregnant woman, conspiracy to interfere with custodial rights, and misuse of charitable funds through the Monroe Foundation. Reporters erupted with questions. A separate investigator stepped in. We have uncovered a deliberate, organized strategy to manipulate public perception, discredit the victim, and secure full custody of a child under false pretenses. This was not a family dispute. This was institutional abuse. The moment the news hit, public reaction went nuclear. Petitions to revoke the Monroe Foundation's nonprofit status surged past 500,000 signatures. Donors withdrew. Gala venues canceled bookings. Their Aspen estate was picketed. Protest signs read, "You left her at a gas station. She left you in the dust." One woman posted a video crying in her car. "I stayed in an abusive marriage for years because of families like this, because of people who said I was overreacting. Haley, thank you. You stood up and we saw it." Even major brands began publicly severing ties with Cascade Horizon Insurance, where Ethan had served as vice president of policy strategy. Then the most unexpected statement came from Cascade's CEO, broadcast live. "We stand with women. We do not stand with monsters. Cascade Horizon is launching a fund to support victims of domestic manipulation and legal coercion." The initial seed money comes directly from funds rescinded from Ethan Monroe's termination. Nicole stared at the screen. Did we just change the industry? But for me, none of it felt real until the following morning. That's when I finally stepped outside the hospital. I'd been discharged with Lena's due date just weeks away, and the world felt different, like someone had turned up the contrast and saturation on my life. Tori met me at the front door, mic in hand, camera crew trailing behind. "Haley," she said softly, "we're not here for ratings. We're here for your voice." So I stepped in front of the mic, took a breath, and spoke. They tried to bury me in silence, in shame, in false narratives and fraudulent paperwork. But I'm here, standing, not just for myself, for my daughter, and for every woman who's been called emotional when she was actually in danger. To every Vivian who thinks their name means untouchable, you're not. To every Ethan who thinks strategy can replace morality, you're wrong. And to every woman watching, if you're scared to leave or speak or fight, know this: we are louder than shame, stronger than silence, and braver than they ever gave us credit for. The applause from the crowd outside was immediate, but the real response? That came online. Millions of views, a global wave of #StandWithHaley stories, survivors sharing, speaking up, finally being believed. That night, I went live on Instagram again. Just me, no filters, no makeup. "I'm not perfect," I said. "I'm angry, I'm tired, and I'm still scared sometimes, but I'm not broken, and neither are you." Then I held up Lena's ultrasound photo. She kicks every time I speak up, so I'm not stopping now. A few hours later, I received a certified letter via courier. It was addressed from the Monroe family's legal counsel. Inside was a cease and desist order, an attempt to silence me, claiming defamation, emotional distress, and reputational damage. Nicole read it out loud. Then she tossed it into the fireplace. "You don't silence survivors with paper," she said. "You just prove how desperate you are." By the end of that week, the Monroe Foundation was officially dissolved. The state seized its assets, pending investigation. Cascade Horizon announced an independent ethics review. Brielle had deleted every social media profile she ever owned. And Ethan? He was formally arraigned and denied bail. But none of that compared to the moment that truly solidified this chapter of my story. When I stepped into a courtroom and gave a victim impact statement, not just for myself, but on behalf of my daughter, Lena. "You left me in the desert to prove a point, but you forgot. Flowers bloom there too. My daughter will grow up knowing her mother didn't just survive, she rebuilt something stronger, and she did it with her head high." It happened quietly, like all miracles do, at exactly 3:42 a.m. on a Tuesday after months of chaos, national headlines, courtroom revelations, and surviving more betrayal than I'd ever imagined possible. I gave birth to my daughter, Lena Grace Monroe, 6 pounds, 8 ounces, a full head of dark hair, fierce lungs, and the kind of eyes that looked like they already knew how hard this world could be, and came anyway. She didn't cry right away. She stared, studied. And then, when they laid her against my chest, she wrapped her impossibly tiny fingers around mine and let out one loud, defiant wail, as if to say, "I'm here, and I am not afraid." Nicole was in the room with me. So was Rosalia, who refused to sleep, insisted on holding my hand through the entire delivery, and whispered prayers in Spanish between each contraction. Frank showed up at dawn with flowers and 2 lukewarm coffees that somehow still smelled like motor oil from the station, and I drank every drop. No cameras, no statements, no articles. Just me. Just Lena. And the kind of peace you don't realize you've been starved for until it washes over you all at once. When the nurse placed the birth certificate form on my tray, I hesitated. "Do you want to keep Monroe as her last name?" she asked gently. I looked down at Lena's sleeping face, then up at the ceiling. "No," I said. "She deserves her own name, one that means strength, not survival." I signed it, Lena Grace Holloway. Holloway, my grandmother's maiden name, a woman who raised 6 kids alone after a mining accident took her husband, who never finished high school but read Shakespeare aloud while folding laundry, who taught me that you don't have to wear armor to be a warrior, you just have to show up, and refuse to stay small. When we left the hospital 2 days later, it wasn't the paparazzi or news vans waiting. It was a crowd of women, mothers, nurses, teachers, strangers, survivors. They held handmade signs, "Welcome Lena, you're already loved. Strong mama, stronger baby." Some cried, some just smiled. No cameras, no chaos, just presence. I walked through them holding Lena in her floral blanket, and they parted like ocean waves. No one touched. No one shouted. Just soft clapping. Like they knew. Like they were honoring a new chapter, not just in my life, but maybe in theirs too. That same afternoon, Tori Blake aired her final segment on our story. She called it, "From Despair to Justice, How One Mother Changed the Conversation." In it, she shared updates on the Monroe family. Vivian was being held without bail, facing 15 federal charges, including insurance fraud, custodial conspiracy, and endangerment. Ethan's trial was set for the following month, with a possible 20-year sentence. Brielle had vanished from public life entirely, last seen attempting to book a one-way flight to Portugal under an alias. But what struck me most wasn't the charges. It wasn't the legal victories or public outrage. It was the quiet moment Tori closed with. She looked into the camera and said, "Sometimes justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about telling the truth loud enough that no one can ignore it again." 3 months later, I returned to my classroom at Boulder Ridge High School. The administration had saved my job without question. My students greeted me with hugs and handmade posters, one of which read, "Ms. Holloway, tough as hell, soft as watercolors." On my desk, they'd painted a canvas tree, Lena's name written in gold on every single branch. I'd been offered book deals, TED Talks, a documentary series. Some of it I said yes to, most of it I didn't. Because the best part of my day was still standing in front of a room full of teens, handing out paintbrushes and saying, "Yes, it's okay to be messy. Art is supposed to feel more than it looks." At home, Lena thrived. Nicole became her godmother and personal guardian angel. Rosalia came by weekly with warm food and unsolicited parenting advice that, honestly, always worked. Frank built Lena her first cradle by hand and proudly carved a tiny heart into the base. She was never alone, and neither was I. The echoes of trauma didn't disappear, but they stopped owning the room. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night, startled by dreams of Ethan's voice or Vivian's smirk. But then I'd turn and see Lena asleep beside me, her tiny chest rising and falling like the only rhythm that mattered. That was the real story now, not the scandal, not the betrayal, her. But one thing still lingered, the law. So with Nicole's help and support from multiple state legislators, we drafted what would eventually be introduced as the Lena Protection Act, a bill that made it a felony to deliberately abandon a pregnant woman in hazardous conditions, with provisions for mandatory sentencing, protective custody review, and state-funded legal advocacy. It passed unanimously in the Colorado State Senate on a rainy Tuesday in March, the same day Lena rolled over for the first time. On the anniversary of that gas station day, the day my life nearly collapsed, I gave one last televised interview. Not for exposure, not for justice, for Lena. The producer asked gently, "What do you want your daughter to know about all of this when she's old enough to understand?" I looked straight into the lens. I want her to know her mother wasn't perfect. I cried, I doubted, I almost gave up. But I didn't, because I knew that if I stayed silent, they'd win. And I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting so she'd never have to wonder if her pain would be believed, so she'd grow up knowing that her voice is a sword and a shield. I want her to know that walking away isn't weakness. Starting over isn't failure. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply survive. And then tell the truth. That night, I tucked Lena into bed. She was 6 months old by then, already babbling like she had secrets to tell. I kissed her forehead, whispered I loved her, and turned out the light. But before I walked away, I stood at the door and said aloud, to no one in particular, I was left behind. But I didn't stay there. I built something better, from the ashes.